What is up, hotties? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm BK10, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, MS58 and TA23. And today we're recapping the NFL Divisional Round of the Playoffs. Someone told me that I should intro the show like that using first name, last name, number. Theo, that's why I asked you what your number would be. So thank you for telling me that you would rock the 23 in honor of our glorious king, LeBron James. And then Matt, of course, is 58 because his favorite player is Thomas Davis. But yeah. Today we're talking about the NFL playoffs, the divisional round. The Detroit Lions got shocked by the Washington Commanders. The Philadelphia Eagles got it done at home. The Buffalo Bills also got it done at home. Both those games were snow games. Interested to hear what your guys' thoughts are on... Actually, I think I know your guys' thoughts on snow games. And then one other playoff game happened.
Chiefs, Texans.
Chiefs. But before we get into all that, Matt, Theo, how are you guys doing on this beautiful Sunday night?
Horrible.
Another year of defending Lamar Jackson.
No, it's okay.
It's okay.
We got extended. That's
true. TikTok survives even under dubious circumstances. Come on, man. What the hell was that? But I honestly just want to get right into the games, man. I'm so pumped up about them.
All right. Well, then let's start with Buffalo.
And let's start with Bills Ravens.
Let's do it.
So what happened?
The Ravens lost. Mark Andrews' fault.
Now, first off, not a superstar at all.
Apparently not.
I have to say, fumbled the ball 2 times, screwed up the ball 2 times. That's not star behavior. Second off,
no.
I mean, the big conversation around this, and we knew going into this game, the big conversation was going to be about the losing quarterback. And while I think Lamar saved some face down the stretch, his final drive was really good. His throw, after they had let so much time burn off the clock, and they were, within their own 20, was massive. But his 2 turnovers were disasters. And the difference in this game between 2 teams that I think honestly played pretty similar in the sense that they both kind of bottled things up because of the weather, and they both really leaned on a run game that they had proven they had for, the entire year. The difference was one team turned the ball over 3 times and the other team didn't turn the ball over at all.
Yep.
And Lamar was responsible for 2 of those. And I just don't think you can come out of there saying, oh, he played some great game. He really didn't.
No, not at all. I'm going to start doing this all the time. I retweeted somebody else's take, and so when everyone gets mad, all the quote tweets get directed towards them and not my mentions. But yeah, Mark Andrews may have lost the second half and thwarted Lamar's somewhat heroic comeback efforts, but the butterfly effect that led to them being down that bad, it wasn't just the missed PI at the end of the first half or something little like that. No, it was 2 blatantly bad turnovers by Lamar Jackson that put him in a hole. And that hole meant that even if Mark Andrews caught that final 2-point conversion, it would have been a tie game, giving the ball back to Josh Allen with 1:33 left to go. And all he needs to do is get it into field goal range, which for him seems like somewhat easy work, So obviously Mark Andrews had a disaster class, but you can also directly trace these things back to Lamar. The tweet that I retweeted said, Lamar is just as much at fault because of what happened in the first half. And it's true. You don't just lose games in the fourth quarter. Things that happened on the first play of the game matter just as much. If you have to make up ground and you have no room for error and you make a mistake, it's because of what happened in the first, man. The Bills made plenty of mistakes in the second half. They didn't get it done super well. They let that lead get chipped away, right? It doesn't matter because of what they did in the first half. Same thing, right? So Lamar shouldn't get any kind of major pass because Andrews sold him at the last second. I mean, everything needs to be irrational and everything needs to be fair. Like Lamar didn't have a totally horrible game all the way through, but he didn't have a good game either on the whole.
Mm-hmm.
Like turning it over is death in the NFL. Everybody knows that. The turnover margin's the number one stat.
Yep.
Yeah. And a lot of the success that the Ravens did have in the second half, I mean, not entirely because of this, but a lot of players went down in the Bills secondary very, very early. We saw them lose, I know,
Rapp.
at least Rapp early, and then Taron Johnson went down at one point. So they were kind of getting thin at that position. But yeah, you just can't have the disaster that they had in the first half and expect to come out and win. And I heard the announcers saying that, well, if the Bills had, made some of these mistakes, it would have been you would have seen this game start to get away from them. Meanwhile, I felt like the game was getting away from the Ravens. Like either team making those mistakes in this type of a game, it would have been a lot to overcome on either side. And I do think the snow has some role to play in that, and Buffalo being at home.
Definitely.
Buffalo being at home is a big factor in this, and that's why it's important that they were 13-4 in the 2 seed.
Yeah, I mean, look, the snow clearly affected the game. There were guys slipping all over the place.
Yep.
I mean, everybody who got tackled seemed to glide for a few yards. I mean, there's drops that you just wouldn't have been dropped if it wasn't for the cold. And the fumbles. What kills me is that both of these fumbles were disaster, nonsense fumbles that should have never happened. Lamar getting spun around and losing the ball.
Yep.
It's not that someone just perfectly placed a punch or he winded back and it got tipped out at just the wrong time. It's like that should never have happened. And the Mark Andrews one, you've just got to realize the situation. You've got to realize the weather, and you've got to not be like, today's my day to jump cut back behind somebody and end around them and then bounce it outside. Like, that's not going to work, dude.
Yeah.
You're not that type of guy, and it's not that type of game.
You just have to protect the football, especially in this weather.
You have to be especially careful, And I think a lot of the times we talk about games like this and teams like this, like, oh, well, you have to stay aggressive. It's good to stay aggressive. Just trying not to turn the ball over, like, yeah, whatever, that's important, but everyone's trying not to turn the ball over.
There's a difference between, like, trying to not turn being extra careful and, like, not being aggressive, and then, like, making silly mistakes like this.
And they made a lot of silly mistakes. And don't get me wrong, like, the Bills being overly conservative, I think a little bit more than the Ravens, like, cost them at times. I mean, there were possessions where they just would throw like a bunch of screens and that was it. Mm-hmm. They really started to get down to it, or they really did not let Allen like go out there and do his thing that much at all. But when the other team is gonna give you 3 freebies, even if you're more conservative kicking the ball and going up 8, which I actually just think was the right call straight up. Clearly, mm-hmm. I mean, it worked out.
Yeah, it worked out
basically perfectly. But I think regardless of the result, you could tell where it's like, okay, well, now you're making them drive down on you and they have to get the 2-point conversion. So you're basically saying, I don't want to attempt to pick this up. You got to attempt to pick this up. And then even if you get it, you just tie me. So I think that was totally the right call. I think the Bills just played a better game, and I think their developments as a team that can really run at you is what did it for them. Now, both these teams can do that clearly, but the Bills of old don't get this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they impressed me a lot. I mean, before the game, I said they should empty out the backfield and make this a passing game, just because of Pierce and Travis Jones and Kyle Van Noy and all the great run defenders that the Ravens have. And it didn't really matter. I mean, they locked in the second half, certainly bit too many screens from the Bills with Kyle Hamilton lurking, but man, the way they were able to run the ball on such a good front in the first half was super encouraging. I just didn't think they'd be able to look that good. Obviously, Josh Allen didn't do too much through the air. Like, did he even end with 150 yards? Like, it wasn't much, but
no, and it was 127. And how many of those were screens? Right?
Yeah, seriously, just very. He didn't he didn't complete a single intermediate pass the entire day. Nothing in the intermediate middle, nothing to the intermediate left, 0 for 1 to the intermediate right. deep down the field. He hit that one big shot against Tampa 2 where he put it over Brandon Stevens. But outside of that, everything else was underneath for him. But in the red zone, he was a threat rushing the ball, and then James Cook and the offensive line was really your MVP of this game. James Cook, he's been a real joy to watch this year. I feel like he does so much dancing, and it's so productive. Like he's not really your home run hitter. Like he doesn't have that much speed, but man, the amount of like cutting and setting up that he does, like in like 0 to 3 or 0 to 5 yards down the field, like he's got so much chemistry with the offensive line in front of him to work off the blocks in a phone booth. He has got some real talent in tight quarters, and that was really on display in this game.
Modern day Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah. He's patient, sure.
He's patient.
He is. I mean, he is, though. He is. And 17 touchdowns total this year. It's no joke.
Yeah, when a running back gets really decisive in the way that he is, I agree. It's really special to watch. I have good backs overall. Davis had a couple of good runs this game, too.
And Tyler Johnson is like,
yes,
they got a three-headed monster back there, and all of those backs are very different players. Johnson is the best like receiver in the leagues somehow, and he's a running back. Like it gets into scramble drill, and this guy is on a mind meld with Allen. It didn't necessarily happen much in this game that I remember, but obviously in the first game against that man coverage, he was able to loop all the way around the field and catch that fourth down touchdown against the Broncos. He's super useful. All three of them are super useful. And Allen, like
Ty Johnson only had one catch in this game.
Yeah, it wasn't a classic Ty Johnson scramble drill game, but it will happen. I bet one more time at least in these playoffs.
So we have to ask the question about Baltimore. Kind of where they go from here, because they brought in Derrick Henry, and I guess they could kind of just run back a lot of the same guys and, hope that they continue to develop at receiver. Hope you see Bateman, show improvement. Hope that Likely continues to show improvement. But do you feel like there's any area where they could improve going forward, or any way they could make themselves more dangerous than they already are?
Oh, man. It just feels like they're so overpowered. I mean, they're the DVOA champions every year, the EPA champions by like a comical margin the last 2 years.
They're like a maxed out team.
It's a pretty complete roster only for them to choke in the playoffs. So no, honestly, I mean, you'd like maybe like a 1A edge rusher.
They need pass rush. Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is a weird game to lose. I mean, I guess here's my thought. I don't come away from this game being like, and the Ravens lost because this position group is a disaster and they need to fix it. That's not what I'm thinking. But they can't make mistakes like this. And I do think there's ways they can build up the roster and run it back. I mean, to some extent, this is just like, you get in the playoffs, it's one game. Anything can happen in any given game. You got to get hot and go on a run, and you weren't hot in this game. Yeah. But you just got to play tighter. You can't have Mark Andrews and Lamar combined for, I mean, negative plays that are probably worth, I don't want to overreact, 15 points of swing. Something like that. I mean, when you can count the drop and 3 turnovers, I mean, it's bad, dude. You can't have that.
Andrews had 2 pretty big drops. He had a drop right before, I think, one of Lamar's turnovers, too, that would have put it at like second and short in the first half. So he had 3 really negative plays.
I don't think that the Ravens are in a particularly bad spot when it comes to bringing people back and running this back. I don't think they have a ton of key guys that are free agents or anything. And obviously they can be pretty aggressive with their cap space regardless. But, a 1A edge rusher would be better. And you just, I don't know. You just have to play tighter than this. It really just was the turnovers.
I think that's probably the worst thing you would want to hear as a fan. Like, I think you would much rather hear like, oh yeah, our offensive line was bad. Like if you're the Texans, you're like, our offensive line was bad. The Lions, okay, our defense was banged up. Like that happens. But if you're a Ravens fan, you're just like, oh, we just have to play tighter. Damn, man,
And it's been like that for a couple of years. If we're being completely honest, I mean, last year you could have said the same thing. If they just didn't make the key backbreaking plays, the key backbreaking mistakes of the game, they win that one. And that's true for a lot of losses, sure, but it doesn't even necessarily feel connected to who the Ravens are as a team. That what Mark Andrews has a fumble and has a drop that would have been a 2-point conversion. That's not, it's not, well, they need better tight end play.
Yeah.
Lamar has a couple of bad interceptions or a couple of bad turnovers. Well, he's going to win MVP here in a week, you know? So you just need your stars to be stars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. 100%. It doesn't get any more simple than that. They can't shoot themselves in the foot, and it's what they did all year. It wasn't so much with penalties in this game, pre-snap or otherwise, but that was kind of the story going in the playoffs. It's like, look, the Ravens are so dominant. They look so good on paper. They can kill you in so many different ways. It's just they have this history of shooting themselves in the foot, and it seems like that's what happened today. And credit to the Bills for getting the takeaways, certainly. But like, come on, like to some extent, it's like, yeah, this one is handed to them on a bit of a silver platter by mistakes the Ravens made. So the Bills defense, Allen was like, how about him after the game? To some extent, how about I thought McDermott had a good plan. Not that the plan is that hard against the Ravens. Like, I'd hope after the first game they figure out, like, okay, we need to blitz more, get in base and play single high a little bit more. They did all the things they were supposed to. And that's just what it feels like. The Bills did what they were supposed to, and the Ravens didn't. But yeah, that's...
Yeah, I thought it was funny, Josh Allen being like, "Yeah, we got the stop on the 2-point conversion," and I'm like,
yeah, you did, you did.
But yeah, shout out Buffalo, man, going on to the AFC Championship game to play Kansas City, and we'll talk about that game in a little bit. But let's talk about the other game that happened this Sunday: Eagles and Rams. Rams gave them a little bit of a fight,
a bit of a fight, as in it looked. I think they were the favorite. They were the favorite to win probably in the last minute of that game. I don't know what the actual win percentage chart looks like, but it seems like they were. And there was a point in that game, and I thought this was very impressive, where they gave up that big Puka throw where it's like Slay had him and just didn't time it right, and Puka made a great play. And that's one of those back-breaking, like, great, now they're in range. Now the clock is not that big of a deal for them. Now it's just we have to straight up get a stop. And I thought that's when defenses sort of crumble and can't counter. But that false start led to, I guess, a little bit of freshness. And really it was Jalen Carter out there just dominating and blowing up 3rd and 4th down to close that one out. He's been phenomenal this year. And overall, their defense is just incredible, man.
Their defense can carry them. It's the conclusion I came to after the Packer game, after Hurts kind of, in the passing attack in general kind of struggled. It's like, well, are they in major trouble? And you just go over the defensive film and it's like, holy cow, man. Like, what are you supposed to do against this layered group of stars at every level? And everyone had their moments today. Carter, obviously, picking up Stafford and twirling him through the air and obviously ending the game.
That's the way you got to do it, though. Pick him up and just start walking backwards. You can't call that.
It's
Sorry.
Great. No, it's 100% a good move. And then, like, Bond had that drive where he just, like, took over, and Slay had some really key PBUs. Isaiah Rodgers, that's my guy, man. I remember making some video about him for some reason, and then he, like, reposted it. And then he got, like, suspended for gambling for a year, and I was like, damn. That's good. Me and him, like, he's a bit of a fan, He saw my work. He gave it the endorsement. I can't remember exactly what he did to warrant a player review, but he was playing well on the Colts before that suspension. And for him to be the depth piece, he picked up that fumble and got some yak. Cup did dome him one time, but outside of that, he played well in relief of Quinion Mitchell. Like, it's just a deep team. I thought Oren Burks played a good game. He got trampled a few times. He did in the run game, but he batted a pass down. He tracked down some screens. I thought it was the right
for loss.
Yeah. So he was able to step in and cover some slack in both of the last two games, and versus the Packers for Slay versus the Rams for Mitchell. Like it's deep, well coached, stars everywhere. It's such a good unit, man. They are going to give the Commanders a lot more problems than the Lions defense did.
I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. I thought what really stood out to me with this defense is like the number of beautiful textbook pass defenses they had.
Yeah.
It's like they have so many plays where they perfectly time it. It's like you might see one or two of those a game. But for them, it's like, you know, I have no idea how many they had. It's seriously like the most I've seen in a game in a minute. Maybe I'm crazy.
The zone coverage they have is like so textbook. Like everyone is just playing it perfectly. Like when they drive, it's always at the right time. It's like geometric, honestly. Like they all move in just straight lines exactly where they're supposed to be. It feels like some creator like drew it up before the play even started. Like they play like on a ruler. It just is. There's no blown assignments. It's just gorgeous to
like the Madden CPU and all Madden. They just don't make mistakes.
Yeah, they just are. Yeah, they just play it perfectly. They always seem to be. I don't understand how football players and just athletes do it in general, how they get their reaction time up this good. And the Eagles are the prime example. They're just ballers, man.
Yeah, the stat line is 5 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, 10 pass defenses.
Oh,
that's great. 10 is a crazy number, right?
Yeah, that is crazy.
Passes broken up is ridiculous.
That's a lot of havoc. That is a lot of havoc to create in one game. And like all of their punch, like their fumbles are the punch outs that you're talking about earlier, and kind of what the Ravens fumbles weren't, right? Like Lamar's waving it around in one hand. Like, why are you doing that? Like Carter's fumble on Kyron Williams, like he ranges over there and like is totally just peanut punching that thing so intentionally. Like they are just a massive problem. They are a massive problem, and there's not much you can do to take advantage of it. Puka had a overall pretty quiet day, I'd say. Even though he
97 yards.
Did he end up with 97? I thought they were doing such a good
14 targets. Yeah, and it was he had that one big chunk towards the end that maybe made it a little bit different. The thing is that when you're playing the Rams, you hold Puka to under 100, you feel really good about it, honestly. I know that maybe makes you roll your eyes a little bit, but
no, I 100% agree. I think Puka is crazy good. I mean, he's not quite wide receiver 1 of the whole league, but he's closer to that than I think people realize. Like I was watching Justin Jefferson in the playoffs recently for a video about if he's a playoff faller or not. And he's really not. Like he draws a ton of coverage. The line has been bad. Like the quarterback play hasn't been great for his playoff runs. Like not his fault, typical shit, right? But the thing about Jefferson and why Chase and Puka are a little bit different is like they can run all those routes and make all those catches, and you can throw them a screen and they can take it to the house. Like Puka and Chase, I think those two are just like right now in their primes as good as anybody in the league. So I'm with you with if you hold Puka to under 100, like you're feeling pretty good about yourself, especially on that amount of targets.
Yeah, especially if you put up 28. Saquon goes for 200 yards. He's having one of the all-time great running back seasons. He's done everything. He hit 2K. He's going to win Offensive Player of the Year, I'd bet. He's had massive games. He's had like classic highlight moments. He's now gone for 200 yards and basically is now, I don't want to say he's carrying the offense because the offensive line was dominant today in some aspects, I guess. In the run game, they were getting a lot of push. But the offense is built around him. And it's just so... It's such a counter to the anti-running back stuff that honestly, like, I believed a couple of years ago where it's, how much can a guy like that affect your team? Well, I think you put a decent guy in this backfield, it's not the same, even with an amazing offensive line.
Oh, totally.
And I think the Eagles could have easily been eliminated by now or had harder matchups. I mean, Saquon deserves all the credit in the world for what
the
he's
Eagles
done.
have been kind of anti-positional value for a long time, and they've even when they made the decision to commit to Hurts, I mean, they could have very easily moved off of Hurts, move off of Wentz, and tried hard to hit on another quarterback in the draft. They didn't do that. They've been drafting offensive line out the ass for years. It's like every single year. I mean, they just keep reloading because they always have a next guy up. They always draft guys when they don't need them. They draft safeties. They draft every linebackers and they hit on them. They are always focused on let's just hit on good players.
One thing.
Go ahead, Matt.
One thing that it was on Twitter for a while and is just definitely not true now. Any sort of Howie Roseman slander. Nope. He is the best general manager
he's
in the
goated.
NFL.
He's good.
What they've been able to do. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. They added 2 first-team All-Pros for under $15 million total this offseason. And how many guys did they just add that are amazing for them this offseason? Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Saquon, Bond, all of those guys have been studs. All of them were ads. And it's their strategy of we're going to keep replenishing our offensive line is a good one, but also they hit consistently. Jalen Hurts, to find a starter at all in the second round, that's huge, man. So just the position they've been put in where, even Hurts, and we should probably get into him after whatever you're going to say, Theo, even if Hurts has a bad game, the fact that they're still able to get to the NFC Championship game with quarterback play like this, which it's been bad the last 2 games,
Sacks.
It speaks to how good the rest of the roster is, and it speaks to how good of a general manager Roseman is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is unbelievable, and this whole season has just turned positional value on its head for me. Yep. I mean, quarterback in the playoffs, if your quarterback has any kind of weakness at all those times that he touches the ball and makes a decision, yes, if he's great, if he is, Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen level player, it's worth all the money. Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, it's worth all the money. But if there is any weakness in his game, you're paying $270 million for that to become obvious in the playoffs, I feel like. Every good thing and all the times they touch the ball, if they have a strength, it can carry you to a win. But if they have a weakness, it can carry you to a loss. And those things kind of balance out, I feel like. And in this Eagles game, Zach Bond was just as much, a part of winning. He was not just as much. He was more of a part of winning than Jalen Hurts was. Saquon Barkley, he was more of a part of winning than Jalen Hurts was.
Saquon definitely, yeah.
Yeah. I think Bond was too. I mean, he made more positive plays, I think, than Hurts did over the course of the game.
I think that's fair. I mean, the rushing touchdown is big.
In the rushing touchdown's big, it is big, but that's just one play. And that's a play where, did he even have to break a tackle there? They pull their guards and no one comes over with him. The crease is wide open. Obviously you have to be able to run, and Hurts is very talented at that, and he's fast. So obviously Hurts' skill set came into play there, but if there was a bad right tackle on that play, that touchdown doesn't happen. Right guard on that play, the touchdown doesn't happen. Those positions are crucial. I mean, look at the Rams. Bo Limmer was their center. Matthew Stafford would have walked them down and scored there if the center wasn't so bad at the end of the game, right? How good your quarterback is doesn't matter sometimes if a single offensive lineman doesn't do his job. People want the quarterback to just magically make every single issue go away because he's the one in charge of distributing the ball. It's just not humanly possible. It's a human being back there, and he's only capable of so much when guys are covered and there's pressure. So you need a quarterback, but there can't be a weak link for you in the playoffs. That weak link will cost you games. And if that weak link is your quarterback, and your quarterback, you gave him $270 million, and he makes big mistakes so many have, Jordan Love has, Justin Herbert has, Jared Goff has, Sam Darnold has, all these guys could get paid huge money or have been paid huge money, and all of them cost their team. So it just, and Jahmyr Gibbs is a bigger positive for the Lions in the playoffs than Jared Goff is, right? he won't get paid a fraction of what Jared got, even though we know this. So for me, it's all, I buy into it too. Like, oh yeah, some positions are more valuable than others. Edge, like wide receiver, corner, these seem like premium things, but are they premium things, or are those the only things we can measure with stats? So analytics told me something that's wrong. Like
I think it's partly that. I do think quarterback is the most valuable, totally, because they touch the ball more than anyone else.
And they can make pre-snap calls.
Right.
Like
they have so much control.
They are a coach on the field.
Yes. So the quarterback is the most valuable, but I think after that, everything else is pretty.
Once the ball is snapped, I do think they're just one of 11 players to some extent. I mean, I think quarterback is like a whole unit, like why? Quarterback, offensive line, skill position, front seven, secondary. I talk about it all the time. Quarterback is a whole unit that's one player. But if you could say, like, would you rather have a quarterback or like an entire offensive line? Like, the answer is pretty clearly, like, I think an entire offensive line. I mean, look at the Eagles. They've gone through so many different iterations just built behind their offensive line, and it's good.
5 years in a row now, just like having the best offensive line in the
league. And Saquon helps them out. Like, this offensive line is, I think, a little overrated. It's not that overrated because it's still one of the tops in the league. But if you're crediting like I see Giants fans say this all the like coping that they gave Saquon Barkley away. And they're like, well, if he was on our team, he wouldn't be doing all this. It's like, yes, that's true, but he would help you out immensely. And he helps out this offensive line immensely as well. Like on the dagger TD run, on what ended up being the dagger TD run, like he paused and he set up the defense behind the line and he opened up the hole for himself. And not a lot of running backs have the just unlimited energy to be rattling off 60-yarders every single game in the fourth quarter of every single game and twice in a game like he has. So he is extremely crucial to everything they do. I mean, running the ball, it's the hardest thing to do in the sport. That's why it's inefficient. So for someone to make that efficient, it's incredibly valuable. So it's been a bit of a crutch for me and for so many people, I think, to just like be like, wow, bad draft pick, positional value. Like, I'm not doing that anymore. And if you do, squirt me with a water bottle, because good players are good players. And if you have a good linebacker, it helps you. Then you can play too high. And that over the course of a season and over the course of the game is crucial, right? Like, there's so many different ways that you can be exploited, and there's so many different ways to leverage gravity if you have a good enough player. Like, just best player available, man. You just
we say it every year, don't we, Matt? You've been saying it for as long as I can remember. BPA,
but here is the take, man. That's the take. Is like the draft is not all that matters, but it's basically all that matters. And in reality, you're either going to draft someone who's good and look back in a year and be like, sweet, or you won't, and you won't care what position they are. I think that the analytics people aren't wrong in the sense that if you zoom out and you look on a league-wide scale and you say, okay, what's the most important position? It's quarterback. What's second most important? Wide receiver? Okay, I can agree with that. Then edge rusher? Yeah, all right. Like, all of that I think is true. But you don't build your team on a league-wide scale. You build your team on an individual scale. And with positional value, you are like splitting hairs to me.
Yeah.
When you have a superstar who's a game changer, it really doesn't matter what position they play. And the other guy who is in that conversation or discussion or has disproven that is Jahmyr Gibbs, who is phenomenal. Sorry, when you have an elite guy like that,
seriously,
it's a game changer. I don't want to move on to that game just yet, unless you guys want to talk a little bit about.
No, I want to talk about Hurts.
I want to say one other thing about the Eagles' rushing attack. Theo, this is, I think, a perfect example of what you're talking about with how much Saquon has done for the Eagles' rushing attack. Last year, their rushing EPA per play was negative 0.006. This year, it's number one in the league at 0.056. It is like 0.06 higher EPA per play than it was a year ago.
And it adds up as you do it a million times. It's a lot better. It's a lot better. Going from DeAndre Swift to Saquon, it does matter.
I did get a reply on one of my tweets. It's like, how bad must Swift have been? When I was hyping up Saquon, or how mid must he have been, or whatever. And I thought Theo
that's a funny point.
Theo would
how
feel
bad must
justified.
Swift have been?
I do feel justified, man. I tweeted the quote out. I'm not paying a $40 million quarterback to hand it off to a $12 million running back. That's got to be one of the dumbest things ever said. Like, I was still a little positional value pilled last year, and it's like, okay, that's too far. Like, you got to leverage your you just got Malik Neighbors, right? Why not soften the coverage for him by having Saquon Barkley in the backfield, like generating blitzes? Like, I just can't believe he said that. I'm kind of changing the subject here. And then all the Giants fans are like, well, Saquon couldn't really help us because our line is so bad. It's like, well, what happens when your line is good? Then he could help you. And they're like, well, that'll never happen. So it's like, why even try? Why fold as a what kind of mindset is this?
Okay, I got to step in and defend Giants fans a little bit because I was thinking about this. This would be like if Cam Newton went to the Saints and like won the Super Bowl. I would like lose my mind. I wouldn't be able to even watch the sport at all. Yeah. And then the other coach who, like, no offense, is Nick Sirianni, is like, got your best player. I would have freaked out, dude, for sure. So if Sean Payton had said that, dude, no. So
DeAndre Swift last year had 1,000 fewer yards, less than half as many touchdowns, and a whole yard per carry fewer.
Yeah, it's like, so dude. I can't blame any Giants fan for coping. Sometimes people are coping and you're like, yeah, I get it. It's cool. But
you kind of got to.
It doesn't make it right.
You kind of got to. And I understand what they're saying. Like, the Giants probably they wouldn't be as good as the Eagles, and Saquon Barkley wouldn't have like the greatest season ever on the Giants.
Stinks.
But like, he could have not that long from now, you know, like you can just get a couple. Like, I guess you can't just get a couple offensive line, but it's possible. Like, you might as well try. Like, it's
right.
What does Saquon Barkley have to do?
Hard Knocks with their GM's 13-year-old son in the room. He's like, you only have this job once. You might as well try and win.
And I was watching, like I said, I was watching Playoff Jefferson for a video that I'm making. Like, I watched Saquon Barkley like stunt in the playoffs for the Giants, and I'm like, didn't I call him like MVP of the league like 2 seasons ago in 2022? Like, for what he was doing, like, hasn't he carried them to a playoff win before? Like, not that long ago. Anyway, let's talk about Hurts.
Do we have
Hurts,
to?
I mean, he didn't turn the ball over, and he didn't have many incompletions that weren't like,
he took 7 sacks,
but he took too many sacks, man, and it was really bad in that way. Yeah,
his issue so much, it feels like, when that pressure starts coming, is like he has, to me, it feels like, at least in this game, very little ability to look to throw the ball while buying time.
Yeah.
Every time the pocket collapses, he just is tucking it and is just totally running it. It's like he has to hit a button to go into run mode, and then that's it, and he can't throw anymore, like a video game almost. That's the comp, because he's just completely putting his head down, and a lot of time, that's not the right play. A lot of time, it's like you need to step up in there. A lot of time, you know, you need to sort of scoot out one way and keep your eyes downfield to keep everybody honest, and then run. Yeah. I liked some of the run, and I still believe overall Hurts adds a lot of value on the ground that you don't see, and, you know, still stealing defenders and the tush. Like, there's a lot of things I still like about Hurts, but this wasn't a good game. And again, I can't help but think, how would we be talking about this Eagles team if Hurts was playing like a top 10 quarterback? We'd be talking about them like they're the favorite.
The greatest team of all time.
We'd say like, this is an amazing team. And it's a team that is still pretty amazing, that I still think is going to make the Super Bowl, but is one that is like doing it sort of in an unorthodox, we're kind of working around what most teams can't. We're beating limitations that other teams can't type of way.
Yeah, he wasn't throwing quick game in this one. Like, he'd drop back and the routes would be short. Like, all of them would be short. And if you don't throw the ball, it's going to get ugly fast, because it's not like you're meant to get the ball out to the first read. I think the first sack that he took, the one that Fisk got hurt on, I mean, it's 3-by-1. they're playing box coverage, the defense is, which means there's literally just a square that the defense is making. And right in the middle of the square is where you're trying to throw to, right? If you can, you want to throw in that void in the zone to someone who is hitching up and just settling. He's looking right at that square. I think it was Dotson, number 83, right? He runs a hitch. Like, one side of the square is getting pulled apart by Devontae Smith. The other is getting pulled by Saquon Barkley. And that hitch is right there, and there's two guys on top playing quarters, so they're getting depth. Like, he's wide open to box out on the driving corner. Hurts is looking right at it, and he just tucks it and runs, like you say, Matt, and then is like kind of just running around the backfield like a running back. Like, throw it. And like other times, like a triangle read stick concept was there for him underneath. Like maybe the corner route on top wasn't there, but then you look to the flat and then you look at the little other outbreaker stick route that's there. You go 1, 2, 3, and it's open underneath, and he just doesn't throw it, and he takes a sack. It's like, bro, get the ball out of your hands. He holds it for longer than anyone else in the league, and his yards per attempt out of the pocket is as bad as anybody's. Since 2022, that's always been the case for him. He doesn't throw it on the move. He's not a Josh Allen or a Jordan Love or a Lamar Jackson or one of these guys who floats to the sideline, has got his eyes downfield and launch it. That's not him.
Yes.
And yet he holds it longer than everybody else. Like, be a runner. Have that be a part of the overall designed game plan. But when you're dropping back, get the ball out of your hands. Like, you're not that much of a positive the longer you hold it, like some of these other quarterbacks. So he has got to get the ball out faster. Like I said in the last episode, they have less volume in the drop back passing game than any other team in the league this season.
Yep.
When's the last time a Super Bowl winner has been built like that? I mean, you need a good pass game, man. You gotta play better than this. It's something that could easily get you beat, and they were lucky to survive today.
Their only incompletions came on AJ Brown target, which I thought was weird.
He did have some drops. I will say that Jalen Hurts.
That's very true.
And those were the times a lot of those were on quick attempts. I think it was on their second drive. They went 3 and out. Their first pass attempt was an AJ Brown drop on a slant. And so there were some plays like that. He did drop that touchdown. There was another that Hurts put behind him. So I do think some of that, and maybe some of that comes down to the weather, was not, great in Philly either. Another snow game that went on. But yeah, Hurts has to be better, but I don't think it was like all on him that the pass.
No, he was
not untrue.
Something closer to neutral than like a complete disaster. But it wasn't great. His
body of work sometimes is tough to really like look at, because it's like, okay, especially in this one, it's like he's holding the ball forever. He's taking a lot of sacks, but he's also adding a ton in the run game invisibly. He also ran for 70 yards.
And he didn't turn it over like Lamar did. Like,
he had no turnovers, and he also probably would have gone like 20 attempts for 200 yards and a touchdown if AJ Brown catches a couple more passes with like 2 or 3 incompletions. Like, he did go 15 for 20. So it's a weird mixed
he's just
bag
average.
With him.
Like, it's hard to.
but he's not average in this. He's not average in like a normal way. He's a very unique quarterback who balances out to average. And I think that means for him, like, I think he could have a great day against Washington. That could happen.
Yeah.
Or he could be the reason why they lose, and you could point to like this and this and this and like, hey, you took 1 billion sacks and it's on you. Yeah. So we'll see. I have hope that he can play better, but I'm not counting on it. And I think it's good that the Eagles are able to get it done, even if the pass game is weak.
Yeah.
Yes. I feel the exact same way. So we might as well talk about Kansas City and Houston. Get that game out of the way. Do you think that the refs are in favor of the Kansas City Chiefs?
Can I be completely honest?
I would ask nothing.
No, Matt, we will cancel you. They're coming for you.
Lie on the podcast.
Yeah, Manny cut this.
Mahomes played great.
Restitch everything I've said during this and make sure it's still pro Mahomes message. Okay, my thought is, I saw a tweet I had like 100,000 likes, which means I'm going to take it as the consensus universal opinion that I am waging war against. But I saw it and it was like, the Patriots never got lucky like this. And nobody hated the Patriots like that.
What?
The Chiefs dynasty. And it's like, I looked at that and I couldn't believe it, because the Chiefs dynasty has turned into the mirror image, at least how we view it, that the Patriots were. It's the same
identical
thing. It's all of the same points. It's all of the same things. They're so lucky. The refs favor them so much. Their devil magic always wins them these like goofball games. And it seems like even when they don't play good, they still get the victory.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's for a handful of reasons. I think it's partially, or a lot of the part, why they seem so lucky is because they're so good. A lot of the reasons why they close out so many games is because they win so much. But I think also them winning so much makes people forget the times that they were unlucky. However, when it comes specifically to the refs of this whole thing, I do think they call more penalties for Mahomes on unnecessary roughness because it's Mahomes. I think that one little thing is true. They do.
They do.
Not a ton.
That call on
Not
Will
that
Anderson
no
was
other.
horrible.
Yeah, no other. It's not that no other quarterback ever gets those calls. But I promise you, like, is there a difference between the way that they ref Mahomes and the way that they ref, I don't know,
Goff getting blown up on that pick? Like, if Mahomes got hit like that, I do think it would be a penalty. I'm with you there.
Because, and you have to realize it's a lot more like the NBA than people think, because it's not so cut and dry as this is a penalty and this is not, which I feel like is how we view NFL penalties. There is holding on every play, and there's just a level of it you can get away with. The same way that in NBA games, there's a level of contact that you can get away with. And the refs are constantly balancing and trying to call certain stuff or call enough of it to keep the game honest, but not so much of it that it ruins the game. And like for the Mahomes hit, the first one, the Anderson one, right?
Yeah.
Was there helmet and helmet contact? Yes, there was. The helmets tapped. They did. But the problem is that if you're tackling a guy straight on and you can't go low, it's virtually impossible to tackle them without your helmets tapping. The top of your helmet tapping the bottom of the face mask. Any normal tackle would have a little bit of contact, but there's a line between some helmet contact that you would expect in a normal, clean tackle and helmet to helmet. What Anderson did wasn't helmet to helmet, and to call it in a situation where it's third and long, not only is the incorrect call, but it's what's created this feeling of every time you get pressure, every time the defense makes a good play, they're secretly rolling the dice, and there's a 10% chance that it's just going to come back and get them, because by rule, technically, if you enforce it how the letter of the law is, basically every tackle is a penalty because they've made it so hard on defenses. And I think Mahomes and top quarterbacks in general are going to get calls like that more than other guys. And when it happens to a team that's going for a three-peat, when everybody's rooting for the underdog, it's super frustrating. So I do think that Mahomes does get some extra calls compared to other quarterbacks. And it would be tough for me to believe otherwise after watching this game.
Yeah, and people were mad at the flopping that he did, and that was lame. But at the same time, he knows the calls that he gets, and I understand trying to get the extra yards. You're trying to advance, and if you think you get hit out of bounds, you want to let the refs know that you feel that way. And the refs didn't call it, and that was good, and the game moved on. And I thought there was a lot of kind of unnecessary outrage about that. Like, if he flopped and it worked, I could maybe see making it the whole dialogue, but just it didn't work. And
it was lame, and we can.
It was lame. It was 100% lame. But people just don't want it. Like, people treating the Chiefs like they're this total evil empire, and like there's just nothing I want more than to see them lose. I mean, maybe that's true for some people. I just don't really feel that way when Mahomes, at the same time, is getting tackled around his ankles and falling forward and throwing a touchdown to Kelsey anyway, and not turning the ball over, and Kelsey is catching it and curling and picking up tons of yards, and Trent
that's the other
McDuffie
thing
is getting.
We have to talk about Kelsey, man.
We do
have to bring up Kelsey.
My point is, the Chiefs played super well in all phases in that game. Kareem Hunt, the running game was working. The secondary was pretty good. The pass rush was getting home. The refs weren't winning the Chiefs that game. Like the Chiefs were winning the
I
Chiefs
agree.
that game.
I totally agree.
And until I see the Chiefs like truly get like put in the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl like directly because of the refs, then I'll be upset.
Well,
but everybody gets these bad refs calls. It's just always happened to every team.
Everybody gets them, but the Chiefs win so much, and we only are like, you got the good call when you win. A lot of the luck is just the Chiefs winning. However, simultaneously, I don't blame anybody for rooting against them.
I don't blame anybody either, but it's like, holy cow. Like,
I have nothing against the Chiefs. However, I think them three-peating is like the least interesting outcome. I don't think that's that exciting, if I'm being honest. I would much rather see two teams where it's like, this might be our one shot, rather than I'm trying to get to 8 to beat Tom Brady. I don't care. And
I mean, it's definitely less interesting than Buffalo trying to win their first Super Bowl ever, or Detroit. I know they lost, but trying to get to their first Super Bowl ever, or Washington. They're in their first championship game since what is it, the 80s or something. Like,
I don't want the Chiefs to get to the Super Bowl just because when I've gone to cover them, I've always been talking to the Chiefs. I've got nothing left to ask Carl Loftus. Let me see Greg Rousseau. Like, bro, I've talked to them so much at this point through 2 weeks of media interviews. It's like I don't want to see these guys again. I want to see somebody new, like in the flesh, in person.
Podium, and they're gonna be like, "Oh, I remember you."
Exactly. Like I already. Yeah,
Theo Ash.
Yeah, there's just nothing to say anymore. So,
well, yeah, because it's been done a little bit, and we're right on the cusp of, I think, people pulling out the "you need to appreciate greatness because you'll miss it when you're gone" takes, because those were popular around this time. I haven't seen it much, but it's going to start really taking storm. And when people start saying that, I can't help but roll my eyes. I also do have to bring up the fact that they won this game by 9 points.
Yeah.
There's like 10 points of special teams mistakes, which is hilarious. Not saying, because let me get this straight. Special teams is 60% of the game. However, it is funny that the Chiefs got like multiple missed field
this
goals.
Was a fair disaster class, a level that I haven't quite seen. Like the final block, he was kicking that. If that didn't get blocked, which was impossible because he kicked it right to the defense, that thing was going to the sideline. Like that may have gone out of bounds to the sideline. It was such a bad kick. And then he missed. They said on the broadcast, and it went on the first kick 20 yards to the right. It's like, how are you missing by? He was missing by miles, dude.
The one that went so far to the right, I thought it got blocked, and then I saw the replay, and it's just no, it's just like an ugly kick.
He was just...
That would suck, dude.
It looked like I kicked it, man. Guy. It was terrible.
I will say, I thought it was funny on the broadcast, that final one that got blocked. They were trying to hype up the Chiefs defense, and they're like, oh, there's 4 guys who could have gotten their hands on that. It's like, it's all their defense. There are many people who couldn't have. So, I mean, as far as the Texans go, I thought it was a pretty good fight by them. Their defense is special. I thought Stroud played a mostly pretty good game outside of a couple of times where he was holding the ball. But at the same time, they've got nobodies out there at receiver, which was supposed to be their strongest
Wayne,
unit.
Dude? Who was that guy?
It was his first targets ever in a game. And it's
Reggie? You lacing him up?
Yeah, I mean, they've got, their weapons just got so down too. And it's well, that's supposed to be the strength of the team. I think the offensive line cost them no matter what, but you're working with very little out there. And of course, the offensive line not only is bad, it's not only losing to good players, but every blitz is just a disaster for them. They're crashing the plane instantly. They can't pick up anything. And it's week, 19 for them, 18 for them, or whatever, dude. Week 20, it's not good, and they need 10 new guys in that room or whatever.
When I saw Wayne out there, I thought it was the rapper trying to get to Kendrick's Super Bowl in a different way. But yeah, it was. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it was rough. I mean, you got legend Irv Smith Jr. out there. I shed a tear when he caught the ball. I won't lie. Shout out to him.
That is crazy. Jared Wayne, 2 targets. Irv Smith Jr., 1 target, 1 catch.
I didn't.
Like, what are we?
Yeah, that's not good. And this game, their defense is sweet. The edge rushers are killer, obviously, but it was a bit too easy to avoid the corners in this one. I mean, as Azeez Al-Shaair had a disaster game. It has not been a good run for athletes who relate to the Joker this offseason, Azeez Al-Shaair and A.J. Brown. That guy got obliterated, man. Like, Kelsey faced basically no resistance the entire game. I mean, that long pass that he had with like 50 yards of yak, he made the safety miss, which, fair enough. He's still pretty shifty. And then here comes Al-Shaair, and he dives and throws a shoulder into him from behind. Maybe he was just trying to go from the ball. It was like the worst tackle attempt I've ever seen. And then on that crazy Mahomes touchdown, it was another cover 3 drop from him where he just is completely lost. Just a horrible game from the linebackers. And again, just goes to show every single position needs to be tip top in the playoffs. Otherwise, you're going to get picked on and you're going to get exploited. And yeah, they were able to just go right up the core of the defense with Kelsey, and he had the best game of the season, and it was pretty easy. One thing that concerns me about the Chiefs, I like the pass rush. I like McDuffie. I like the way they look there. But the Texans were running the ball better than I thought they would. Sure, the offensive line didn't hold up versus Chris Jones and Karlaftis and company, but they were able to get some movement. The Texans had a positive EPA running on early downs, which is really one of their big keys to winning. That's always what they want to do, and most teams are able to prevent that from happening. But the Chiefs were not sure how that bodes for them going into the Buffalo
against the
game.
Bills. It's not good.
Not good.
That needs to be different. Now you can say that much. It needs to be different, or they're not beating the Bills.
And Stroud ran by Bolton trying to spy him really badly on that long explosive run. So they are on watch, that front seven defending the run. I mean, I've been saying it all year. I'm a little bit concerned about this defense, even more than I am Mahomes and the offense, despite some of the lack of great players in the skill position room outside of Kelsey. But the defense statistically should worry you maybe a little bit more, and we'll see about that running game. I like the passing game. I like the pass rush, but the running game is something to watch.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was super hype about this Kelsey game, though. As usual, another Kelsey masterclass that nobody cares about because he doesn't look like Calvin Johnson doing it or whatever. But he, look, sitting down where you need to sit down, he could have had 150. He could have had 200. He could have had 300 if Mahomes would look his way every single play.
You're silent on his blown lead block on the end around. Gronk would have put Anderson on his ass.
Yes, you're right. Well, some dudes around his age aren't even in the league anymore. So the fact that he's putting up 100 for a dynasty, I won't say who's not in the league
anymore.
I didn't say it.
Okay.
Shout out Kelsgoat though, and his touchdown was awesome. It's just a little thing. Here's the issue. Kelsey gets a bunch of yards, he makes a bunch of plays, but it's always the stuff that you can't really see on the camera. It just doesn't look as cool on the broadcast, Like and even his yak stuff. Kelsey really is a great yak player and has been. He's never really looked like Kadarius Toney or Rob Gronkowski or anything though. We were there. We saw it in person.
The Chargers,
and you remember the Chargers.
He's the catch and curl goat of all time. That is 100%.
He does that stuff, and it just doesn't look cool. And this plays all back into the Chiefs stuff where it doesn't even look like they're making that great of a play and it works. And that's part of the frustration. But
it just looks like everyone else is out there just making a really bad play. It's like, how do you not tackle this guy?
Exactly. That's part of the frustration. And that's also Gronk obviously didn't do that. And there were times when you have Randy Moss for the Patriots, but Brady at times really looked like it just made everybody else look dumb rather than him look that amazing,
Yeah.
And that's
they had the era with Edelman cooking everyone, and it's like, dude, how are you letting this guy?
Right. It's that type of stuff. So we'll see. I'm excited for Chiefs Bills rematch, of course.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be a classic, hopefully.
Yeah. I still think the Bills can win that. I do.
I do.
I think the Chiefs.
Why wouldn't you?
They seem inevitable with just everything that's happened in another playoff win versus the Texans. And that Texans win was a bit more lopsided than I thought, I'll be real. I thought that Texans I didn't think they'd cover. So it's scary, but I still think.
Well, if it wasn't for like the missed field goals and stuff, like it probably would have been.
Well, yeah. This is the thing about luck, though. Like, nothing is really luck or devil magic or whatever people want to say. Like, if a quarterback throws a pick, everybody's like, oh, yeah, that's a real game right there. Like, you can't make any excuses. Like, that's just what happened, and all the blame, it goes there. If a kicker misses a kick, which is the exact same, like, someone on the team doesn't execute, whether it be the quarterback or some other position. Mm-hmm. If it's not the quarterback, it's written off as luck. If it is the quarterback, like, that's the truth and what actually happened. It's crazy. Like, every single team that wins gets the devil magic label on Twitter. It's driving me nuts. Like, yesterday night, people are like, man, the Commanders' devil magic is even worse than the Chiefs.
Commanders?
Today. What? Like, what are you guys even talking about? Like, I shouldn't even give credence to Twitter. Twitter is no different than a meth streams chat on the side. So I've got to stop taking it seriously because it truly doesn't matter any more than like graffiti under a bridge. So like,
but like Matt said, that's 100K likes. That is like the global consensus.
Yeah,
that's what everybody thinks. Every like 100% of the population. You don't need to pull in,
except for you and I. You know.
Wow, of course.
Except for us sages.
Do we want to get into Lions?
Commanders lost the shocker, but is it really that much of a shocker given how bad the Lions defense has been banged up, how many injuries they've been dealing with? The offense for Detroit needed to play a perfect game. That's what it was going to come down to. And like the Baltimore game, you turn the ball over a bunch, you lose the turnover battle, you're going to lose the game. And they turned the ball over 5 times. 3 Jared Goff interceptions. Can't have those. There was a fumble in there, and then there was also the trick play, Jamison Williams, and he probably should have just thrown that away. I don't know why in the world. He was like, it's covered, but like, fuck it, we ball. You're down, dog. Like, what are you doing? Yeah.
Yeah, I still... I think when that interception happened right before half, I was like, oh, yeah, the Lions are like not gonna win this one. They're gonna lose. Mm-hmm. This was a rough game that exposed a lot. Now, first off, Washington deserves a lot of credit. We said going into this, if Washington was going to win, it was going to be because Daniels was going to have the specific game where he really used his legs, he avoided negative plays, and he let it rip through the air. It's exactly what he did.
Yeah,
he ran the ball like 15 times. He didn't take any sacks. He didn't have any turnovers. He balled out. You know, I'll say, as far as he goes, a lot of people are trying to claim that he's the greatest rookie quarterback of all time. And I think on some level, I feel like we say this every year. Like, or not every year, but we say this a lot. You know, there's a lot of great rookie quarterback, more than you'd think, you know. But I don't think you can deny at this point that Daniels is at least somewhere in that conversation with a lot of other guys who maybe were on teams that just weren't going to be as successful as the Commanders.
I think the thing that stands out to me with Daniels is how his progression has gone throughout the season. Like, we talk about a guy like Hurts and how like he showed improvement in college, so you knew like in the NFL, it's like he shows the ability to improve year over year. Daniels has like improved at things throughout the season, and that has just been absolutely remarkable to see. I bring it up, I feel like every other episode now. At the beginning of the season, it was so much point and shoot stuff, and there was a lot of him like being kind of boxed in to a certain role and being limited, you know, within the system of the offense. But at this point, the offense is him. I mean, we've seen so many teams now with Kingsbury where the second half of the season, the offense completely falls off. And it started to look like that for a minute with Washington. And then Daniels just like completely flipped the switch. And now he is making up for the lack of the system not being able to deliver in the same way. It's just Daniels is being an absolute beast. And at this point,
he's a demon, man.
At this point in the season, I do think he is closer to being a top 5 guy than he is to like not being a top 10 guy. Like there are
so that would mean that he's at least 7.
I think he is 7.
It's been a huge playoff run, man. It's been great. And I think so many quarterbacks have had weaknesses that have been exposed in these playoffs. Like even Herbert, right? Lack of touch, balls too flat, maybe a little bit too hard to catch. Like it's a little thing, but in the playoffs it gets really exposed. Goff, you mix up the coverages and he can get a little bit confused. Like Jalen Hurts getting the ball out quick. All these things that, you know, you can kind of, well, I guess the Eagles, and I don't want to pick out because they've been winning these games, but you guys know what I mean. With everybody watching and the defense getting ramped up, it becomes really easy to see what these guys struggle with. And with Daniels, it's just like nothing. He's throwing over the middle. He's not taking sacks. He's running it great. I mean, he did take some huge hits in the Buccaneers game.
He still has some cartoony hits in him.
He does.
Let's make it, but
he gets hurt. It's not really. He's not getting hurt, which is what was my concern. Was like, oh, he just take one of those hits and it'd be curtains, and that hasn't happened. So it's just tough to. It's tough to see any real weakness in his game right now. I mean, he's faced the diamond test and come through clean.
He's like Stroud, but also like one of the best runners in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Like in terms of like he's got 2 superpowers. He's super accurate, like great arm, but also like an elite runner.
Yeah, avoids picks, like good deep ball. Like
his deep ball is awesome.
His deep ball is butter. It is butter.
I hate to say it, Theosh, but I'm butter deep ball pilled. It isn't the hardest throw. You're right about layering throws over the middle, but it's. The bomb is just the most beautiful play in our great game. That's just the truth. Give me the guy who throws the butter deep ball over Herbert, who can zip it anywhere and hit the hole shot.
But you can't tell me a Herbert hole shot doesn't make you also just go, mwah, chef's kiss.
I get mad. I get mad when I see stuff like that.
You get angry.
You can either catch it. It comes down to if the wide receiver can catch it with a hand over his eyes, like Diami Brown.
That was an awesome catch.
That was crazy.
That was a great throw too.
It was,
but it was an awesome catch.
That's my thing with the deep ball is like the quarterbacks get all the credit and the wide receivers get none. But you know,
I was watching this compilation. Someone said Burrow's got to have the craziest deep ball in the game. It's like, look how perfect these are. Look how easily it hits their hands. And then it's like, they're really good throws. But I came away from it like, dude, Jamar Chase is the GOAT, man.
And he is.
It's like there's a bunch of Jamar Chase. I'm like, I don't know, dude. Some of that's Jamar.
Single one, dude.
Yeah, the greatest deep ball throwers are the guys who have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and in college, Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., and then go on to throw it to Terry McLaurin, who's like noticeably good at tracking it. And it's not the only thing. Like Daniels throws it in a catchable spot, but there is a correlation here more than with some of the others.
As far as the crazy like quarterback wide receiver combos college wise go and like how they turn out in the pros, like LSU, you guys got it
twice.
They did it twice.
However, it is hilarious that compared to like Stroud and all the OSU guys, like Daniels and Brian Thomas Jr. and Neighbors did even less. Like the fact they won 9 games with that shit kills me.
Yeah, they were like 9-5 or something.
It was rough, man.
Yeah. Brian Kelly left for greener pastures, bro.
Dude,
on 2 different pads.
Yeah, and their offensive line was crazy too. Like,
it's crazy how talented that trio is, how good they are. Imagine where they'll be in 3 years in terms of where they'll rank among NFL like quarterbacks and wide receivers. If you told me right now that all 3 of those guys were considered top 5 at their position, I would not find that shocking at all. That's how good these dudes are.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I Daniels was super impressive. I do want to talk about the Lions. I do think it's really interesting from their situation as well. Goff had a bad game. Yeah. He threw some bad picks. I didn't see your interception review, Theo.
They were all 3s, basically.
They were all.
I know 3s. The first one was definitely a 3.
Yeah, I did agree that on the Williamson one, he could have done a little bit more to fight for that. But, I thought this was a really rough game from him. I also think defensively, they were just out of guys at some point. Next man up is cool to an extent, but you just can't lose as many dudes as they have. My thing that bothered me, and I know I'm kind of a Lions homer.
I mean, they drafted you, so.
I mean, my thing is that there are some people talking about how their window's closed, and I just don't agree with that at all. I don't think that's true. The Lions going forward are in a tough spot because they're at risk of having about as bad brain drain as you could get, right?
Yeah.
Ben Johnson looks like I don't know if he's for sure or very, very likely to be gone, one of the two, and Aaron Glenn as well. And people aren't crazy to say that Campbell isn't just going to be like fine without those guys. It's going to be tough. You lose those guys, and I mean, Ben Johnson is at this point, one of the best coaching candidates in a minute because of how great of a coordinator he's been for the Lions, right? Mm-hmm. And some of that masks like Goff's deficiencies and all that stuff. But at the same time, just because you lose your coordinators doesn't mean that you can't hire back guys who are also successful. We compare them maybe to the Eagles, and yes, the Eagles lost their coordinators 2-1 offseason, and it was just a disaster the next year. They won 11 games, but it was a disaster the next year, right? Mm-hmm. But then they turned around and they made better hires, and they're largely back. I think if the Lions can make good hires, there's nothing stopping them from doing that this offseason, then they could still take a hit from the coordinator loss, but not fall off the face of the earth. And more importantly, I think a lot of people just sort of assume, well, they're paying everybody and Goff has a big contract, so they're done and they'll lose a bunch of people. Nope, that's not true at all.
Right.
The Lions are sixth in cap space. They have $70 million, and they don't really have many important free agents at all. The Goff contract might eventually get them. It's not going to be next year. If anything, you look at their roster and you say, they could improve significantly. They could improve. Now, that's not to say that it's a guarantee to happen. I'm not sitting here and telling you the Lions will win a Super Bowl because they need to have a really great offseason, and maybe more so than other teams because they have extra important decisions to make at coordinator. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, their roster is still one of the best in the NFC. It can get better, and the coordinator question mark could end up being a positive. I just don't see the case that they can no longer compete to get to the Super Bowl.
People say things with too much certainty. I mean, what if Steichen gets fired next year, and to rebound, he was like, well, I'll go play in Detroit with Penei Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown and, all these.
That would rock.
Jahmyr Gibbs and all these weapons. Like, there's a lot of people you can hire. Look at what the Packers did. They hired a head coach at Boston College to come be their defensive coordinator in the NFL. The Lions could look at those ranks. I'm sure there's plenty of creative people in college who would love to take a crack at coordinating that unit with that offensive line and those weapons.
And if we know anything about Detroit right now, they will turn over every stone, I bet.
They will turn over every stone. And Brad Holmes is a great GM, and no one has the drafting track record that he does. I mean, the amount of stars he's added in a short amount of time is unbelievable. So who's to say he can't, add some more really good talent like he has every single offseason? So with Goff, I think there's always a bit of a ceiling that scares you when you have a quarterback like that. He just has kind of fallen flat in so many big games, and it's a real concern that they never get it done with a quarterback like that. But, Eli Manning won rings, Nick Foles won rings. Like, it can happen, man. It really can when you're not as snake bitten as they were this season. So I'm 100% with you there. Their window, it's really not closed. I understand the panic about the brain drain, and I really do think Ben Johnson is going to do well at his next job. He's so creative. Like, maybe no one can think of some of the specialty plays that he does, and it's so well orchestrated. But at the same time, like, it's easy to coach good players, and the Lions, they have a lot of good players. Like, look at them compared to Green Bay, right? I like Green Bay. I like Jordan, but they don't have stars like the Lions do. Amon-Ra St. Brown's a 2-time first-team All-Pro. Penei Sewell is, better than everybody on the offense. You can trade the entire offense for Penei Sewell in Green Bay, and that's some of their main competition. So it's not over for them, certainly.
No. I mean, they could be better. They could be better if we're talking just from this point. They could be better just based on the fact that they get healthy.
Yeah,
I mean, they had a guy who was going to be the runaway front runner for Defensive Player of the Year get hurt, and he ended up and he was still towards the top of the league in pressures for most of the season.
Hutchinson, Hutchinson coming back matters a lot. I want to say this though. Can I say something controversial?
No.
He was playing plumbers and mailmen the first 3 weeks of the season, by the way.
He had 40 pressures.
Everyone plays plumbers and mailmen. Myles Garrett plays plumbers and mailmen all the time.
Dude, he was playing the lineman that Hutchinson faced week 1, that Rams guy who was their third string in the first game of the season. It was the worst performance I watched all year. He couldn't defend. Hutchinson could just spin, and the guy could do nothing about it.
Look, Myles
he
Garrett
may have ran away with it, but
Natty Bengals twice a year, man.
Bro, this guy would not start for the Cincinnati Bengals or be the backup. Just gonna throw that out there as a little bit of hate after being kind to the Lions. He was playing street sweepers.
I have my own agenda with the Lions or my own negative agenda, and that's to see Jared Goff without Ben Johnson, because people do think that Jared Goff has had this big turnaround, and I still believe he's the same guy that he was in LA, to some extent.
Change. People
don't change. I love that. You're
I'm an egomaniac for making my mind up and not changing it. What happens in the playoffs? Darnold, Goff. Baker didn't play that bad, but he did have that fumble. Pumpkins, all I see.
There definitely is some truth to that.
There is. And I do change my, it's not what I think of you right now will never ever change. But
quarterbacks can get better. They can grow. But when a guy is terrible one year and then awesome
and then plays
the
with
next,
Justin Jefferson and goes crazy, it's
it might be
Justin Jefferson. It's I think you know what I just realized?
What?
I feel I view every quarterback everybody looks at LeBron James. With LeBron, I think everybody understands when it's not his fault, and they pick apart the role players. Every player in the world deserves the same treatment LeBron James gets. Where it's if J.R. Smith messes it up for him, it's okay. We can all say it.
Not Michael Jordan, though.
Michael Jordan.
Everything was his fault.
Jay's fault.
What do you guys think about the Commanders' defense? That's another.
It's a good question.
Area we can touch on. I mean, Jeremy Chin had a pretty big game. Frankie Louvu.
Jeremy Chin had a big game. Frankie Louvu had a big game. Cool. Sweet.
Luke Kuechly actually came out of retirement and had a good.
I was just thinking about how ass the Panthers are.
Where are the Packers right now? They're chilling right next to them in Cancun, buddy.
Yeah, I bet Mike.
We all end up in the same place eventually. You've seen your team get the chip. I can't say nothing.
That's right.
But
we're on our way back to Title Town, and you're on your way back to nowhere. Charlotte.
I don't know Charlotte. I guess.
Charlotte.
Nothing wrong with that. I guess it's not as good as Titletown.
Yeah, we go back to 4 Lombardi trophies. You go back to J. Cole.
What do they call the NFC Championship trophies? We have 2 of those.
Probably Lombardis.
I don't think they call I think
probably Lambos or Bart Starr Awards or something like that. Is probably their technical name.
I was thinking of one today.
The George Trophy.
What is the oldest quarterback that you would take over? I don't know. I don't really want to name anybody specific.
Oldest alive?
But the bit is no, not oldest alive. Okay, would you take Otto Graham over Jalen Hurts?
I'd take Namath over Jalen Hurts. No cap.
This is my
prime
question.
Otto Graham.
Dude,
Prime Otto Graham.
I'm taking
Jalen
some of these
Hurts.
old
right
Yeah,
now, though,
man,
it's modern
give me
game.
prime Otto Graham.
I was gonna say Bo. They had Bart Starr.
Dude, I'm taking Bart Starr over Jared Goff easily. Like, I watched the first 3 Super Bowls, or was it 4 this offseason? Bart Starr and Joe Namath were slinging that thing, man, especially Namath. I got Namath pilled watching that Super Bowl because I know, like, people always talk about how bad his stats are and how he's, like, the worst player in the Hall of Fame. I watched that Super Bowl. He was hitting hole shots. Like, the ball was, like, exploding off his hand. Like, he had the arm talent. I was like, man, this guy looks like Justin Herbert. I like this guy. Except he was winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I guess
can't. So he's better than I'm taking Namath over a lot of guys in today's league after watching just his Super Bowl.
Just that one game.
Dude, you know who I'm taking over? I'm taking Phil Simms over some of these quarterbacks. He's another guy I was watching recently in an old playoff game.
Yeah, but he's played the 4, brother.
I'm taking Phil Simms over Jared Goff. Like right now. He's not as old, but
I would take Steve Young over literally everyone.
That's fair. I'm not taking Joe Montana, though.
I agree. Joe Montana was a Bill Walsh merchant.
Tua. Tua with Jerry Rice.
Tyreek Hill.
True. That's true.
Basically the same guy.
Dude, I'm taking Ronnie Lott. Like, I was just on an old kick of watching old 49ers games. Like, Ronnie Lott was him, dude. He was like, people jumped so many routes in just the 2 games that I watched. I was like, Jesus, Ronnie Lott. They were not joking about him.
Give me the, was it Rod Woodson that like passenger or like illegal contact was made for? Was that Rod Woodson or was that someone else?
I don't remember.
It was either Rod Woodson or...
Is it that Raiders guy? I can't remember.
No, it wasn't Rod Woodson.
Would you take Sammy Baugh over Jalen Hurts?
Slinging Sammy Baugh or Jalen Hurts? I might take Jalen Hurts over that geezer.
Okay. I see.
But
he used to finish a year with 150 passing attempts. I'm sorry, I'm looking.
Before the Super Bowl, I'm not taking any quarterback over Jalen Hurts. Because they never won any rings, you know. Once the Super Bowl started, then
yeah, Bart Starr has a Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts doesn't, and my analysis
Bart Starr is like a 95%
Jalen Hurts had 4 touchdowns in a Super Bowl. You know who had more than that? Steve Young. Real talk.
He had 6 and he had like 5-0, right?
He has the NFL record.
And you know what they said about Steve Young before that playoffs? They said he can't win in a big game.
That's exactly what they said.
And, you know, I was watching that old 49ers game and Jerry Rice caught a touchdown and they said, like, Jerry Rice gets a lot of criticism for not having caught a touchdown in a playoff game before. It's like his 3rd year in the league. He's about to go like on just the craziest run.
Imagine going back in time and telling someone that Jerry Rice, like year 3, Jerry Rice is like, yeah, this guy's going to be the greatest wide receiver ever for like 40 years. By the way,
he had like 22 touchdowns in one of his early seasons,
and like 12 games or something.
Yeah, like in his 3rd season,
it was a nutso one.
His first 3 years in the league. Yeah, he had 40 touchdowns.
One of my least favorite takes. I saw actually this one today on TikTok, or the other day on TikTok, about like dudes having Randy Moss or Calvin Johnson over Jerry Rice. I can't stand that stuff, man. No, I don't.
No, he had 22,000 receiving yards. 22.
It's the craziest record. Like, it's up there all time.
People think Jefferson's going to have a shot at it. Like, I don't think he's going to get it.
I think a guy will eventually get it. It can be done. Honestly, I wonder if Larry Fitzgerald would have done it if he had better quarterback play for a lot of his career.
True.
Because another tangent, I was looking at some old Larry Fitzgerald stat lines for whatever reason, and he had 1 year, he was 29 years old, goes for under 800 yards, but has like 160 targets, which is crazy.
Dude, when I was way too analytics pilled at the beginning of my TikTok career, I pushed like Larry Fitzgerald anti-narratives.
I remember.
The drops over stats thing is still true, and I'll stand by
still
that.
True.
But like the efficiency, I was way too hard on him over. Like,
But I was looking at this one game because I was like, how the hell do you even get that few yards on that many targets? Like, that's impossible, you know?
Yeah, who was his quarterback?
And he had a game, 2012. He had 11 targets for 1 catch, 2 yards, and a 0-58 loss.
Bang.
And that's
Who was the quarterback in that game?
Seahawks, of course. Oh, it was like Skelton
or Cole
or something.
Also,
one of
the
those
corner I
dudes
was
who had to
talking
start
about-
against the Panthers in a playoff game.
The corner I was talking about, Mel Blount. Give me Mel Blount over anyone. Mel Blount rule.
Terry and Arnold penalty merchant in the modern day, but whatever. You asked about the Commanders' defense a long time ago, Blaiden, and it totally went out the window.
4 scoring 7 years ago.
The defense, I don't know, Matt. I don't know. What happened every time they gave it to Gibbs, it seemed like he was completely gashing them.
Right.
And they've really struggled to defend the run all year. And although the pass offense has gotten a little bit better recently, I still don't know if I trust the A.J. Brown stopper, Marshawn Lattimore, and the rest of the gang.
I don't know if I trust their run defense against the Eagles. If the Eagles can avoid, because the Lions kind of got down and then compounded it, and I thought their defense was good, but at the same time, like, okay, when Goff threw the interception to Jamison Williams, that should have been a touchdown. Williams was open. If you put a little bit more air under that, like that could have easily been one, and it was just underthrown, you know. Now, I think they deserve some credit. Like, you still got to create havoc. But at the same time, some of these are like, okay, Jamison Williams throws an interception because he doesn't know to throw it away because they're on their second non-quarterback throw trick play of the game. I still don't trust it. I'll say this. I think it was mostly the Lions kind of blundering and then the Washington offense being great and taking advantage of a really bad Lions defense.
I want to watch more of them. I think the equalizer is Dan Quinn, and I think he's just been on fire this year. Like, he's not just playing man and blitzing and playing some of the schemes that have gotten him beat in the past. Like, he's playing more zone and doing some really clever things that confused Goff. Like, on the 3rd and 1 that ended up being a fumble, he was in a nickel bear front with Luvu rushing the passer and just one Bobby Wagner behind him. And some of those things are kind of interesting. And maybe he can find the thing that kind of flummoxes Jalen Hurts. Like, I really think it'll have to be a Dan Quinn over Kellen Moore type of masterclass. And I'll have more information on scheme earlier. I can't get all these things from the broadcast.
Right.
But it did seem like, I agree with you, Theo. I thought a lot of their pass rush plans seemed pretty good. At least, I mean, it's a good offensive line.
They isolated on the linemen, and they were able to attack the weak points. I mean, Kevin Zeitler was out, and Mahogany didn't have the greatest game. They got blown up trying to run power really early, and that kind of set the tone for the whole game.
That's like play 1.
Yeah. And then that fumble. Yeah. They got Payne, and they got John Allen, and they got Dorrance Armstrong, and they got Luvu, and they got these guys who are really good coming downhill. I like the physicality. I like the culture there. I like what they're doing. And against an Eagles offense that kind of lacks that passing identity, I do think that they're in danger of just getting out feisted by this group in some way or another. But man, when you look at the matchups on paper, there isn't a lot of like, wow, they got someone who can cover anybody. Wow, they got someone who can beat anybody.
They're still building. Of course, they're not really. Not that they haven't earned it, but they're not like really supposed to be here. They're not supposed to be in the conference championship game at all. And they're still building. It's crazy that Washington, the NFL does this in a way that no other league quite can, where a team like Washington, I think we were talking about them like they're going to be like the worst team in the league. Maybe they are 2 wins away from the Super Bowl, and it's not crazy to think that they could beat the Eagles.
No,
it's not insane to think that. Like, that's wild, man.
It is wild. Teams
can just flip on a dime so quickly, and anything can happen in the playoffs massive when it's just one game in the NFL. That's good stuff.
It is. So we'll see. Cosme's out for them as well. I mean, it seems like they're at a pretty major talent disadvantage. And I just don't think Hurts is going to be prone to the same volume of interceptions and turnovers that Goff.
They're not letting them drop back that many times.
Yeah.
And the Eagles defense is
the
Eagles defense
it's completely
is just
different.
Completely different. It just is. I don't think Washington's going to have 45 points.
I think if I were Washington, I would man blitz every single play.
It's not a bad idea. I mean, that's kind of what the Bills' strategy was against the Ravens, and everybody's strategy is against these teams that have this kind of backfield. Is like, man, we got to catch these runs. We gotta get an extra guy running free and stop them in their tracks. Because if we give them space, they're gonna be beating us. But again, that's when AJ Brown enters the equation, and he is the Washington killer.
You can get pressure on Hurts. He doesn't get the ball out quick enough. Like, it can kind of be twofold. It could work, but the Eagles' offensive line is also very, very good. So there's a chance that they just pick it up. And
yeah, I'm definitely. We'll talk about it more on the next episode. But I'm definitely feeling Bills Eagles, but that's not too
interesting.
I could see it.
Yeah,
I could see it.
But I don't want to totally write off Washington. We'll talk more about it.
We will. But I think that's it. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about before we send the good people off on their Monday mornings or afternoon or evening, depending on whenever you're listening to this?
I'm not going to say anything about the Buckeyes because when people listen to this, it might have already happened.
Oh, that's true. That game is happening.
It doesn't feel like it, man. It's crazy. It's going to be a disaster if they don't win it, I'm afraid. This is the most they've ever supposed to have won in that.
Well, here's the good thing about this, We're recording on a Sunday. So if they win, we can talk about it Wednesday. But if they lose, then it's like, it's been a couple of days. We don't really have to touch on it. So
if they lose, it'll be y'all two on Wednesday. It'll be cool. It'll be a Theo solo or something. It's not the end of the world, but go Buckeyes.
Go Buckeyes. Respect. But thank you all so much for tuning in. And as always, from your favorite first initial, last initial number, we will catch you on the flippity flop.